All right, guys. I appreciate you joining me. This is Phillip Long with Business Information Solutions. I have a special guest, Charles Tomeo, with us, and we are going to jump right in. And a couple of housekeeping tips. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat. We may answer them throughout the presentation, or we may wait until the end. We can have a Q&A answer time. So I want to be really respectful of your time. We're going to start right at the top of the hour, and we're going to stop right at the top of the next hour. So let's jump right in. Today, we're going to be talking about you've been hacked and how to get back to full operation without paying the ransomware. And throughout this, I'm going to basically lean a little bit on Charles's insight. But first, I'll introduce myself. I'm Phillip Long. Most of you know who I am. And I am the CEO of Business Information Solutions. We've been in business here for over 20 years, and we have 600 clients from Gulfport to Gulf Breeze. We have some exciting announcements that we are actually going to cover the entire state of Alabama. We've made some strategic hires, so I'm really excited about that. Currently, I own 5 different businesses. I'm a certified information system security professional, and I just passed my CMMC qualifications to become a registered practitioner. So I want to introduce Charles Tomeo, and he is the Chief Revenue Officer at Axcient. He has 20 years of IT and cybersecurity experience, and he is the previous Vice President of the Worldwide Channel Sales at Carbonite. He's also previous Vice President of the Worldwide Sales at WebRoot, and also Senior Director of Worldwide Systems Engineer, Professional Services and Training at WebRoot, and 5-time CRN. This is channel stuff that a lot of these end users won't understand, but basically channel chief from 2016 to 2020. He's a managed solutions provider mentor, been in the top 250 list in 2013 and 14, and the Circle of Excellence for channel partners in 2018. So really like to welcome you, Charles, and appreciate you attending.
No, thank you. Appreciate the invite. It's always good to talk about. This is definitely one of my favorite topics.
Sure. And really, when you look at Charles's credentials, he's really got a successful career in generating revenue. But I'm gonna tell you, we work in a marketplace that is driven by success. So if you can be successful, you're doing a lot of the right things. So we really, I think he's going to bring a lot of insight into what we're going to talk about today. So I want to start off with a poll just of our users here on the call, and I want to ask if you have ever been hacked, and those are the questions that we want to start with here. And has any kind of hacking, and when I say hacking, I want to say data loss, data, whatever. And I tell you, all the people a lot of people are voting no. I'm gonna go look at their domain and see if they've ever had their personal credentials stolen or anything like that, because the reality is most people at this point in the game have lost some type of personal identifiable information. So, all right, I'm gonna share the results here, and it's showing that only 25% have been hacked. Now, hacked is probably a very basic, term, but how about any weigh in on that, Charles, as far as your thoughts on the amount of business owners that have been hacked, or any comments there?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is probably stuff that they don't know, right? It depends on who's managing the devices, what level of protection you have in place, and ultimately with what's been going on with the pandemic, it certainly is a bit harder as we've let people use personal devices, and you're having different people in the household use them. So, I guess, to your point, it depends on what you consider hack and what information
Yeah.
has actually been stolen
Yeah.
from you. But certainly on a personal side, I think a lot more people have been hacked than they think.
Yeah. And really what the bad guys are after, I heard a guy say this really not that long ago. He called it the crown jewels, which is ultimately your data. And I think that we really don't, I was just really considering when I actually added this slide myself to the deck, and whenever we think about data, I don't think that we think of it as the crown jewels, and yet it is a multi-trillion dollar industry that is taking place right now with people, encrypting or really the attack on our data. We have seen so much that is going on, and I don't think a lot of times the we don't treat our data as if it is indeed the crown jewels. Want to really just talk a little bit about just some recent breaches. Of course, we know about the Colonial Pipeline. They wound up paying really in a lot of ways. I don't think it was a high ransom. I think it was about $4.5 million. But the bigger picture in that to me was the supply chain management of fuel and the things that could take place in that. I'm just going to read through these quickly, and then I'm gonna let you kind of open it up, let you kind of give your thoughts on it, Charles. Of course, JBS, the packing plant, they actually paid $11 million in ransom. And McDonald's just had a breach where they said no massive data was stolen, but some employees' data was stolen, and things of that nature. And then, of course, EA Sports, EA Games, they're a gaming company, and they had their source code stolen from their place about 10 days ago. And of course, with that source code, you're going to see a ton of knockoff games. That is going to be, you know, some bad actors are going to be selling some games that are, pretty accurate, and they're going to be, at knockoff prices where they get to, take all the work that the EA Games did. So, what's your thoughts on these recent breaches and really the dramatic increase in the ransom pricing?
Yeah, I think it's, ransomware has been pretty interesting, right? It's not something that, you and I know is new. It's been around for years now, but they've definitely made these very targeted attacks. One of the biggest challenges is certainly, once they start getting paid, the bad guys, um, then they're just going to keep on coming back for more. But a lot of it has to do with, not just how they're managing the security, but even part of it's education, right? So you see a lot of what goes on here. We still have seen a ton of phishing campaigns that go at, or spear phishing, where they're going directly at these folks. But it doesn't seem like it's something that's going to stop without putting the right tools in place, and certainly the right policies in place internally.
Yeah, for sure. And then you always like to think about who's behind these attacks, because I think the average consumer thinks that it's some guy in their mother's or grandmother's basement or something, but really these are countries with economically suppressed economies. They're STEM trained, which basically means they're smart people. They're science, technology, engineering, mathematic trained. There's readily available people within those communities. There's really a culture of crime and corruption, and they usually are targeting countries that have no extradition treaties. So even if they were to get caught, which again, the dark web and their tactics are so dark that it's very difficult to track them. But you know, they are, even if they were caught, we can't just go over there and go grab them up and bring them back. So it's a crime that's happening and it's going to continue to happen. And I believe for a long time it's going to continue to increase.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because a lot of the countries that you're talking about uh, do have wider spread broadband than you would think.
Hmm.
So even though they're challenged in some aspects, they have broadband access, like you said, they're well educated, but if they went and got an honest job, they probably would make less annually in an honest job than one of these attacks that they actually were able to implement. And
Sure.
if you look at a lot of these things, we would find that a lot of these ransomware attacks had EULAs in them. So you could go out on the dark web and you don't even have to be technical, and you could get somebody to basically set you up with a piece of malware that you could go out there and distribute and try to make money. So it's not hard.
Yeah, that was one of the points on the next slide. There was like, really, how are they so successful? I mean, this is a multi-trillion dollar a year industry that has sprung up, and that what you just said, the tactics and the softwares and everything is readily available, very inexpensively. There's some major players out there that are developing these, they're sharing these, and there's also, a lot of these, countries, the banking system makes it very easy to transfer Bitcoin into their fiat money. Of course, we have target-rich environments because of everything that is, being connected, that is connected and is being connected, and the Internet of Things. We're adding and adding and adding things to the network. Um, this is one that really is kind of piqued my interest over the past about 6, 8 months, and we're going to be doing some announcements, pretty big announcements about our company. But technical staff are underprepared and overworked. Gartner just released a report, and 99% of firewalls they're expecting that are breached within the next 3 years, up to 2 years now, 2023, will be due to insufficient, basically improper configuration. They're not set up correctly. And a lot of other data is coming out around that. And I want to really speak to that for just a second because, we think about it from, in our industry and, hiring technical staff and really the importance of it. And I would link it to like medical staffing or whatever. Everybody is running at 125%. And a lot of times they're going through the motions, and downtime has been really elevated in our society, like productivity and, no downtime, work, work, work. People won't tolerate things not working. And a lot of times the IT guys are basically, to make it work, they don't necessarily, they're band-aiding situations. Have you seen that, or is that something that you guys have been studying or looking at?
I've seen that, even before I went into this side of the business. When I was worked for a bank, basically you don't want to put position the people that are, creating the revenue or overall operating the business. As an IT person, you don't want to be in a position where you're stopping people from actually getting their job done. And so there's definitely been a bigger swing over the past few years where, certainly, at the enterprise level, I think that's changed. But I think on the SMB level, like you're talking about, kind of that, underprepared, overworked. How many times have you seen? I'm sure when you've gone into an account, you're looking at, a firewall where some of the rules that they may have put in place may be years old,
Yep.
and it was just to get something to the work. They needed a particular program that maybe wasn't written correctly. So now you're putting in these basically holes within your system. So even though you have potentially you have some of the right tools in place, you've just opened them. It's kind of like if I have sensors on my alarm system, if because it's easier, I turn them all off so I could freely move about the house. Then if somebody breaks into a window or cuts a hole in the side of the house, they walk right in and there's no problem, right? They could
Yep.
go take what they want and they could leave.
Yeah.
And so that's
Uh, there was another article that was again by Gartner, and he discussed this problem, this issue. And, all the time we're looking for these, big targeted attacks. That's the ones I even showed right there, because, you want to kind of jar somebody into the realization this is big and it's real. But, that from an IT perspective, the bad actors, it's not the great white shark that's going to kill you, it's the mosquito. It's going to be something that is readily available and all. And ultimately, business leaders are not prepared, are able, or they're simply just not asking crucial questions and that are protecting their crown jewels. And I want to kind of, go back to that thought, is that what we're protecting here, this isn't, this ain't playtime. This is real deal stuff. And there's a lot of implications that we're talking about, and business leaders are going to have to educate themselves in order to be prepared to answer those questions. Because whenever you do root cause analysis and they release on a lot of these studies, um, to me, again, we talk about the targeted, the spear phishing, and that's where these guys get the big money. But for every time we see the big hit, which is way too often, very often, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of small hits that are happening. And it's almost, with the way that things are set up with these tools and how they work, it's like being able to scour huge neighborhoods and check for unlocked doors. Like a lot of towns, you'll see where there's a thief that's going around, and really he's not busting out windows and he's not picking locks. He's just jiggling the car door, and if it's unlocked, they steal. And in a lot of ways, our networks are left like cars unlocked in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The interesting story in my personal life is that I had run into a guy that I grew up with, and he owned a clothing manufacturing company in New York City, and ran into him with another friend of mine that was an FBI agent. He said, "Yeah, you're not going to believe what happened." Went on vacation, came back, and my admin said, "Just wanted to let you know, I wired the money over
Hmm.
to get the goods that you needed, to manufacturing the next line of clothing." And he said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, she said you sent me that email to wire 400,000." So I went to the CFO and I said, "We got the email. We need to send this over." I gave him, all the information that he needed, the wire transfer information, and I transferred the money over. And he said, "I never sent you an email."
Yeah.
And
Business
so
email compromise. Yeah.
and the tough thing is that because of that number, like you said, it's not the big, shock and awe number, but that wound up putting him out of business. And ultimately, with everything that's going on in the world, the FBI couldn't help him. It wasn't a big enough dollar amount.
Yeah.
And once the money's kind of out of the country, it's kind of like good luck. So is a real tough thing that he wound up having to learn. But there were no checks and balances in place first off, and then adding the tools on top of it. So it's always that it's always that it's not just simply magically you go and buy a solution or a service and you call it a day. It's kind of all the things that I know you guys work on.
Yeah, sure. And I'll never forget, I had a client one time tell me, "Can I just buy one product? Why do I have to have so much of this or that or the other?" And you know, this is, they talk about kill chains, and this is a military term, and it talks about really how they, are going to execute an operation. And, this is what's called a cyber kill chain. And I don't want to really labor on it because I want to spend like the first 25-30 minutes talking about the problem so that people can kind of get on understanding it and frame it. And I don't want to get onto the solution, but really the first is reconnaissance. And they're going to take a look. The next is going to be intrusion. They're going to get there. They're going to figure out a way to get in. Then they're going to exploitation. They're going to be there, and they're going to get on the machine, and then they're going to look to escalate their privilege so that they have rights to get to that crown jewel. Then they're going to do lateral movement. They're going to move around the organization. And one of the things that about that McDonald's attack, they stopped them within a week, but they lived on that system for over a week. So, really, when they say what they lost and all that, they may not actually know. And then they're going to do lateral movement. They're going to move around. They're going to try to hide. They're going to, deny services and do things. And then ultimately, they're going to try to steal the data or encrypt the data because that's where the money's made. And I would love, and I mean, literally, I don't know, uh, Charles, if you've looked at what's called a MITRE attack framework, but literally there is hundreds and hundreds of steps that are documented on how the bad actors are executing these things. And that's why you have to have a defense in depth strategy.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, that is one of the most important things, right? It is not, to your point, it's just not one thing that fixes it. And if you're worried about at all, what's going on, what's out in the wild, a lot of this stuff you could even just Google and you could see real life examples that, like you said, don't wind up in the news. Where you're going to see it, on your local TV.
Hmm.
But it's amazing. Like I remember, a group of orthopedic surgeons. I had read an article a couple of years back where they had been in business for over 20 years, and they had used a basic phishing scam. They sent one of the surgeons an email, asked for access to the system over the weekend, and in a 6-month time frame, they had captured over 500,000 personal identifiers from that business, everything from social security numbers to credit card data, healthcare data, and so you can imagine what that did. You wind up, taking a 20-year lifelong business and it's gone.
Yeah, because people are going to shy away from that. And then there's also going to be all types of, especially, we're not seeing it as much here, although, I work with a guy that sells cyber liability insurance out of Chicago. And, up there, they're already having claims like civil cases where if, that doctor group or whatever lost those records, they're filing civil claims based off of the data breaches. So we're going to see more litigation. Again, it's going to get messier and messier and messier. But kind of to move on here, when we talk about this, it's really most of the things that are happening is they call it advanced persistent threat, and all it means is they're trying to compromise your system. They're trying to get on your system, and they're going to live there and do that cyber kill chain that I talked about, where they're going to figure out where the crown jewels are, and they're going to give themselves permission to get to them, and they're going to hide themselves, and then they're going to exfiltrate and steal. And then usually towards the end of that is whenever the end user, there's discovery and containment that take place. That's really the good guys. They found out what's going on and they're trying to contain it. And but after the person's lived on that machine, I haven't looked recently, but the average at one point was like over a year they lived on the machines, and now I think it's down to about 100 days that they live on the machines. Like the Atlanta breach that a lot of people know about, where they encrypted and they didn't pay, and it wound up costing the city. It would have been so much cheaper for them to have paid, but they didn't. Was that they had lived on the machine long enough because they realized they got access to the backup, and they saw that they kept a 90-day cycle of backup tapes. So on the 91st day is whenever they executed the ransom. So this is something that's planned, and it's something that's hard to stop. All right, so I want to now change the conversation. I want to get real with people, and like if somebody called you, and when you look at attacks, it's usually on the weekend or it's after hours because they know people aren't on the system, so that they can have a lot of encryption time or whatever they're going to do. But let's just say you've been hacked. Are you going to pay the ransom? Do you pay it? That's kind of the way I want to frame for a moment. I want everybody to go, okay, I just got the call this morning at somebody gets in early and it's 7 a.m. They called and said, listen, none of the systems are working and we're getting this email or this file that says, oops, you've been encrypted. And what are you going to do? Do you know what you're going to do? Because if you don't know what you're going to do, and most people don't when you really ask them to write it down, they'll say they do. But if I said, all right, well, write it down on a napkin, they don't know what they're going to do. So let's talk about what we want to do if we don't want to pay the ransom. So a couple things we want to do is really identification of where the data is and what systems are critical to your operation. And again, you don't have to write a book, but you need to know. And I want you to weigh in on these as we move through them, Charles, because of course Charles works for Axcient, which is a disaster recovery business continuity solutions team. So this is what he deals with every day.
I mean, this is important. The playbook is in some cases almost as important as everything else, right? Because if you don't know, kind of not only what the important data is, what the systems are, but also depending on what business you're in, you may have you may have to keep the data. There may be a data retention issue as well, and so just making sure you know where everything is, and how to how to make sure that it's protected. I think those are the big things. But certainly when it kind of hits the fan is knowing what you're looking at first, as opposed to, like you said, just getting it. If you didn't do any of this work, what are you going to do? Your only option is going to be to pay it because you're going to be desperate, and you
That's
don't want
right.
to be in that situation.
And with the strain of people working from everywhere, it's been happening for a long time, but it really got pushed to the max with the COVID thing. And I hear all kind of clients saying, "Yeah, we like being back in the office, but I tell you, we really like the flexibility of being able to work from wherever." Now all of a sudden, we're strowing our data further and further. It's harder to keep up with it, and as it relates to, like if you were to have a breach and have to report, you really need to know where that data is. And ultimately, it would be great if you knew what data got affected, because that is going to determine on who you have to contact and ultimately how much it's going to cost you. Here's the other thing. This is something that I am very much going back with our clients right now and pushing heavy because, we've talked about, you know, cloud backup, it being the cat's meow or whatever. And I think again, going back to that trust, I mean, my clients trust me too much, I'll tell you. And I'm really working on defining some terms. And the two terms that we want to talk about are going to be recovery point objective, that RPO that's on the screen, and then the recovery time objective. Why don't you weigh in on that for me just a little bit, Charles?
Yeah, I mean, these are definitely, you're kind of hitting on everything here, right? And this is part of the, just preparing, right? And making sure, not only, where you are from a backup standpoint. So how often do you back up? Um, and, ultimately how fast you can get back online. Because as you well know, from doing this long enough, is that, time is certainly money, and it certainly is for for your end customers when you're dealing with them. And so making sure that there's integrity in that data, so that what do you actually, how often are you backing up? What are the needs, based on the client, and then really how fast you can get it back up. So I know when you're looking at the tools, these are some of the things that you're testing. Make sure that they fit not just your client's needs, but also the SLAs that you're putting in place.
Yeah, that's true. How quick you can get back up is something that I've had so many people when something bad happened. I've gained a lot of clients. So they said, well, they said they had everything in the cloud. Okay, what's that mean? You know what I mean? And I think again, the business owners are going to have to they're going to have to step up and start asking better questions. And it's a lot of the reasons why I do these the educational pieces that we do is because buyer beware, and business owners are going to have to ask the right questions. Even like I fill out a lot of compliance documents for clients and new clients and everything, and I'm seeing way more of that. And a couple of things that I'm seeing, one is where for cyber liability insurance, they are requiring that you basically check a box that says I can restore my operations to full capacity within 10 business days. And the reason they're doing that is because statistically, 60% of businesses, uh, well, two reasons. Number one, the transfer of risk, and really that's what we're talking about when we're talking about insurance, is they're saying, okay, I will, because part of any good cyber liability insurance policy, it's going to have where they pay you the loss of revenue generally after one business day. They pick up, they look at your books and they say, okay, you make 10 grand a day or whatever, we're going to pay that. But now they're saying we're only going to pay that for 10 days because they're making you check a box saying that you could be fully recovered within 10 business days. And again, that's a move on their behalf. It's limiting, the transfer of risk or the risk ownership, but also it is, because statistically, 60% of businesses go out of business if they can't have access to their data within 10 days. So these are the types of conversations, the objectives. What does that really look like? For me as a business owner, what systems do I have to run my business? Who needs access to them? How long can I be without them completely? And if I could recover them, say I can recover them in one day, how far back do I have to go to where the data is not corrupted, where it's safe? So because that's going to be a multiplier of cost, because if you had to like if your recovery point was 2 days ago, like my good backup is 2 days ago, okay, what is that going to cost you? Is it possible to recreate all of that data for those last 2 days? And when we're dealing with people that have like engineering firms, heavy marketing firms, when you've got staffing that charges a lot per hour and they're creating data, that data becomes extremely valuable. And you got to do a quick calculation. I've got one that isn't near like all the ones that you got to be an accountant to do. So that is, to me, is something that like in our technical business reviews, I am pushing my team to really have that conversation with our partners, because it's something that I want to have clear before it's needed. So one other thing is, writing that disaster recovery plan. And again, this doesn't have to be a tomb. This doesn't have to be something that is so complicated that you can't understand it. There are some key components to a good disaster recovery plan, and I don't know, Charles, if you want to weigh in on, give me some components of a good DR plan.
I think the one thing with, certainly with disaster recovery, you look at, I think this is where the old adage of, hope for the best and prepare for the worst.
Yep.
Right. And we've, I don't think anybody expected there to be a pandemic in March, and most businesses weren't back in the office. Right. So now they're working from home.
Mm-hmm.
So I know people have adjusted their disaster recovery plan, but really it's just, things like, making sure that, it's everything from the natural disasters to the pandemic. I would say just making sure that you are, backing up the data. What does that, and if you're leveraging the tools to do it, kind of what does that look like? What's the, like, to your point, how fast can you recover that data? What are the plans around that? So it's going to depend on the business, but it really can be very basic.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, who needs access to it? How long can you really be without it? I talk to companies and they're like, yeah, we could go a week without the data. And I'm like, okay, cool. Do you do your payroll here? Oh, yeah, we do payroll. Oh, we could do a week as long as it's not every other Thursday. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, well, you gotta prepare for the worst case scenario, not the best case scenario, because I promise if something bad's going to happen. And when we're talking about disaster recovery, we focus a lot on ransomware because I think statistically that would be your biggest risk. But this could also be a event. And down here we have hurricanes, we have fires, we have floods, which really water damage from a physical aspect has always been the pipe busting has been much more higher than the tornado or the hurricane. And then above that likelihood is somebody just simply deleting a file accidentally or overriding a file or thing or hardware failure. So when we talk about disaster, it's a broad, such a broad scope that really has to be considered.
Yeah, and I think it's why, we see a lot of people doing it's great to have, that disaster recovery, option, but, are you testing it? Are you making sure that the backups are actually happening when you want them to happen? Right. And depending on the business, as you said, it depends on kind of what, mission critical data do you have, what applications rely on that data. So it's
Yeah.
really just doing really a review and an audit of everything that you knew to be, to really run your business.
Yeah, and it's something that could probably be done to a very large degree with the stakeholders and there where we talk about, developing that incident response plan where, um, okay, something happened, you go through a few scenarios. Okay, how do we get back to whole? All right. And then, the next phase of that incident response is basically when do you activate it? I mean, these are things that we were working on. We had two hurricanes, let's see, this year that were, we had, gosh, man, Sally was one of them. And then Zeta was right behind it. Well, we were, Sally was really, it was kind of that sleeper storm, it came in on us. And, everybody was thinking, local folks were like, ah, yeah, nothing, it's going to go to these, and not going to be anything. And boom, that thing turned on us and it went slow, slow, slow. And we had an enormous amount of rain and we had a ton of trees fall down on all the infrastructure and it caused an enormous amount of damage. And we learned a lot from that particular incident as a company. And as it relates to implementing the plan, when you implement it, once we get a hurricane within and we're within the cone, we have an offsite facility already set up. It's that's out of the area, and we send technicians there to be able to support our team. And then we have another team that stays back here for the physical office aspect, as well as helping clients. So again, when you implement it, when you trigger it, you need to lay all of that stuff out. You could probably add a lot to that.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Is it's not just creating that plan, it's implementing, it's testing it. Um, Especially because your clients are relying that you are going to be there and you're going to take care of it, right? So it's it's interesting that you deal with that kind of weather, so you're a bit uh, more used to it. But you look at even what happened in Texas, right? Where everything froze up, and I don't know how many partners called out to us saying, hey, they're struggling to get internet. Um, you know, they they're basically just shut down, right? They're losing power. So they didn't prepare for. In some cases, we heard of some of them not being as prepared as they should be because it wasn't something that normally happens.
Yeah, that's like
But
every 10 years they get a bad freeze like that or something. And, it's amazing. And in our market, I think a lot of, the folks here, they understand. And I have like several insurance companies, just more than probably statistically from a ratio, and I don't really know why, but I have a lot of insurance companies that I work for, and they never really can explain to me how things happen. But it's human nature is what's going on. Is all the companies after a hurricane, they run out of here. They don't want to take any more risk because they just had to pay a big wallop of money. And about 5, 6, 8 years later, all of a sudden, there's plenty of people wanting to take that risk again. And then the hurricane. And when I think of insurance, I think of like life insurance because I'm a big fan of whole life insurance, kind of building your bank in whole life insurance. And they can tell you how many 53-year-old guys are gonna are gonna die this year. And but that type of insurance is totally not managed that way. So anyway, I digress. So we want to, think about that, implement that plan. Another thing is also even cloud-based systems like Office 365. This is something when I tell people this, they're like, "No way." Uh, you know, don't forget to back up your Office 365 or your Google Suite because Microsoft, they have it right in their service agreement that they recommend that somebody that it be backed up. I don't know if you've gotten any horror stories from people. I have a couple where ransomware got somebody's SharePoint in one drive, and they were out of luck and lost a bunch of data.
Yeah, we've had those. We've also had, disgruntled employees, believe it or not, that go in, delete a bunch of data, and then it's gone,
Yeah.
right? It's not backed up anywhere. And so, it's definitely one of those things where, you want to read, you certainly want to read the T's and C's. And, um, I think that's where, just kind of working with somebody that, is comfortable working with, your size business, understands, what you need to do to be successful from a technology standpoint is big. And we're seeing that more and more that people are outsourcing this stuff and relying on it because it's, any type of these, data loss, data breaches, could basically close you down.
Yeah, 100%. That's and remembering again, people think, "Oh, I'm in the cloud," and I'll just be, completely transparent. I am so much a guy that does not want all my eggs in one basket. That's why I own 5 businesses. And of course, this is the one that's my primary business, and the cybersecurity business is probably secondary. But I own real estate and all those things because I don't want all my eggs in one basket. And I think too often business owners, somebody needs to go and just have an honest conversation with them and say, "Listen, man, you're hoping for the best too much, and you ain't preparing for the worst." And you know I don't know, and that having like when I think about the Microsoft Cloud, we use it. I'm a fan of it, but Microsoft offers data backup too. And would you really want to have your data in the same place, your production environment is? That goes against everything that we've been taught. And yet I hear people all the time, they're okay with that. So again, having somebody that can help manage that risk is huge. And I think, business owners sometimes really need to think about that.
Completely
And
agree.
yeah, and this is kind of a little graph here, is a infographic that can talk about really what it takes in order to lessen that impact of a cyber attack or really of even a natural disaster. That impact analysis, is really a business continuity plan. We use the word backup so often, and I try not to use that. I try to, I want to talk about restoration and recovery because just a backup, you could have, a backup of all of your files, but if you don't have systems to run it, you're really, the files are not good until there's systems to run.
That's
And
right.
this screen really talks a lot. There's calculations that need to be made, which is ultimately a risk assessment, knowing where the data is. You got to think about how you maintain this plan on a basis. You got to test it, you got to measure it to make sure it's there, and it's one of those things that's not a one and done kind of thing because there's a lot of moving pieces. You think of the Internet of Things. People are just. I mean, I'm just seeing it all over, where they're just adding these devices on their network and they're connecting it to their business network. And every device has an operating system, and every operating system has a vulnerability. And I just, yeah, I just go into worry mode. It really is something that is our risk is going up, and our intelligence of how to stop it is not going up. And I'm talking about it from a an IT guy, like I am, so concerned. And when we look at our staff, like a technical staff, I don't know if you guys do anything with like disk profiling or Myers Briggs or whatever, but we use disk, and I've been using disk for almost 20 years. And we do that amongst our whole team. And that's really a dominance, influence, steadiness, and compliance. It's really how you measure behavior, and there's no one profile better than the other. But one thing that is consistent with technical staff, they are steady and they are compliant, which is great whenever they've got a great leader. But when they are left to themselves, they hate change. And a lot of times, if it ain't broke, don't fix it is the order of the day. And we can't stay there, and business owners sometimes fall into that same rut. I'll let you weigh in on that, Charles. Have y'all do any of that kind of stuff at your place?
Yeah, we've done a bunch of that stuff. Everything from like the ones that you had referenced. We've done like energetics is another one, and a lot of it's to figure out kind of what people's strengths and weaknesses, especially because we have kind of different uh, different teams working together, everything from the sales team to marketing to support to engineering, and it's trying to figure out like you said, like what are people's strengths, weaknesses are, and then how do you work and collaborate together. And we've gotten a lot out of over my years of doing it. It helps you kind of understand how the more techies think a bit differently, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
than maybe the sales folks and the marketing and how they work together. But yeah, it's always good to do that, and it definitely what I found, managing the pre-sales engineering team is just giving those people access to kind of new tech, career development where they can learn more, usually get more out of them.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing that I want to make note of here is that most engineers, and even like I don't care if they're like we actually have a lot of engineering firms that we work for, and their MO is steady and compliant, but they don't like change. And there has to be a change agent in the world of cybersecurity. There has to be somebody who will force the dial sometimes a little bit. You got to do it with class and with character and with effectiveness. But a lot of times, you really need to have somebody on the team that can do that. So let's just talk. We've got about 10, 11 minutes left. Let's talk through some things about this. You and again, and I am a partner with Axcient. Charles and I sit on their partner council. There's no secrets here. I'm a fan of these guys because of what they offer and how they offer it. And I don't want to talk about all the cool techie tech stuff because most business owners won't. They're going to take it in small bites, and they're ultimately going to have a lot of trust in their vendor. But talk to me about some good things in a plan, Charles. Let's go over this with me.
Yeah, it's definitely, so for you being, obviously more technical, you're working with your clients, it's always a bit more detailed, but ultimately you want to get to the point where if I'm that, client that's working with you, I want to make this, it needs to be easy, right? I don't need to be the technical expert. That's why, I see more and more of these partnerships, like I said, coming up where people have decided they're better off outsourcing it, but you don't want to have to pick and choose because of a certain cost constraints of what to back up, right? We firmly believe back up everything, making sure that there is a plan behind that backup, right? There's no single point of failure.
Mhm.
So we have our data centers are ISO certified. You want to make sure the flexibility and affordability, I think, is what we kind of refer to as that worry-free data protection, so that you know you're not getting a bill every month that's getting growing and growing, growing like it used to be. So we've moved off of that. Um, chain-free backups is another one that's really important, and we see it more and more, even outside the U.S., where internet speeds just aren't what they should be. But even inside the U.S., where maybe if it's a manufacturing plant or something like that, where maybe the technology isn't quite there, it's something that you know kind of just runs, puts them in a good position, and ultimately, I think the last point on here is the most important to protect your data against ransomware. So we get calls every week on how our air gap security has basically saved their bacon, where they got hacked. Someone came in and they were able to basically infiltrate their systems and encrypt their data, so they thought. And fortunately, we have this solution that we put in place where we're actually protecting that data, and we make it look like to the bad actor that they've been successful, and they haven't.
Yeah. I want to touch on two things and give a little bit more like that redundant and secure data centers. You guys are not all tied up with the AWSs, the Google Cloud, and the Azure or Microsoft Cloud, because a lot of these components, a lot of these cloud servers, and a lot of these cloud services are running in those big three. So to me, this is part that matters to me and it matters to my clients or whatever when I explain to them is that you need to have your data in another spot, because I mean, I'm getting text right now where there's some things going on, in the world right now where hacktivists, basically bad guys, are spreading spreading things through some router files right now. It could possibly affect some of these big three that we're talking about. They will go down. And when they do, you don't want to have everything there. You want to have the ability to restore in a different data center that's not connected. And then I want to talk about the chain free backups, just a little technical here. And the ability with chain free backups is that your data set can be controlled, where like your data that you're backing up, if it can infinitely grow and grow and grow and grow, or you can do it with this type of, this is patented technology that you guys have that allows you to be able to keep the data for not forever, but maybe like for cycles, that meet compliance, maybe 7 years. But what happens when a data set grows and grows and grows and grows, you wind up having to go back out and start it over again. And then you have the time it takes to do that, and then the trouble of keeping, now what do I do? I've got this other data. Where do I store it? I can't just throw it away. So it's very complicated. And then air gap really is, the bad actors, what they're doing when they're coming in is they're going to try, just like at the city of Atlanta, they're going to go in there and they're going to figure out the backup, and they're gonna affect it. And all they did up there is they just affected the selection list. They just took all of the actual data that was in the selection list, unchecked it. So they're getting successful backup, successful backup, successful backup. But with your guys' technology, they don't. It looks like they are affecting it, but actually it's stored and it's got like nuclear keys, where really for our organization I would have to call and and it's kept for a certain amount of days, even after I call and say, yeah, we want to delete that data. So that air gap technology where the bad actor can't get to the backup set and turn it off is really, really, really huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
And
those are
definitely,
just,
like I said, we hear every week about that saving somebody's bacon.
oh
So
yeah,
it certainly makes us feel good.
yep. And that's real deal stuff right there. I want to do a quick poll on about cyber liability insurance. I do this on every event that I do, and I hope that people are getting the message. Um, do you have cyber liability insurance? And it's a major uh, thing that, if you're a multi-million dollar company, under 25 million, and you got some basic controls in place, this is a great way of uh, getting yourself into a position. And like, you're probably talking under $3,000 to $5,000 a year. It's totally the Wild West on cyber liability insurance, but it is major that you need to address that. And we're looking at, got a lot of people on the call without it. You need to talk to me. I mean, I'm not going to say it's cyber liability insurance, but there is a magic number. I'm just going to go over this because I'm really passionate about it, because I've been in so many situations where it makes me sick. I'm physically sick because of the client and the situation that they're in. Or really, knock on wood, we haven't had these problems in a long time because of that defense in depth strategy that we've employed. But I've been there. I get new clients this way, and I feel for them. Um, there's a magic number that you call when you have a good cyber liability policy. And those guys, again, they bought this risk, and they have a crack team that's going to come in there, and they're going to tell you whether you've had a security incident or a security breach. A security incident could be almost no money. A security breach could be millions. And they're going to have like a forensics team, they're going to have a public relations team, they're going to have a a team that does negotiation for Bitcoin and all of these things. And you need to dial that number. You need to have it programmed in your phone, and you need to dial that number the moment something happens. Or you need to have a guy, like a team or that can make that happen for you. All right, off soapbox. But that is really that is one of the things that I just cannot stress enough. And I see so many businesses in our market that have, I know these people, they've worked hard to make their business, and they are at such risk. So to kind of wrap things up, we are doing really a major cyber risk assessment. And we did a webinar a few weeks ago, and I've done a couple of these. This is really a lot of time consuming stuff, but it's good stuff for the business. We're going to do a free cyber risk assessment where we're going to look at do a firewall penetration test, network security review, a governance document. Basically, let's look at the documents that you guys have. And I'll even give you some templates to help you with that incident response, the disaster recovery, things like that. We're going to look at that disaster recovery business continuity assessment. We're going to look at your cyber liability insurance to make sure that you're covered and that it has the right areas of coverage and even the right limits. And that's at least a $3,500 value for your business. So that's for anybody who's on the webinar. All I ask is that I don't want to keep that open forever. Get with me before the end of the month, and we can get something scheduled, and we'll come out and meet with you. And again, I'm not going to come out there and hairy, scary guy. I want to help you. And so if you would like that, all you have to do is send the email to events@askbis.com. I don't see that we have had any questions, any comments, or if you guys want to throw any questions in, go ahead and we can be happy to answer them. Anything that you want to add, Charles?
No, I think that's a great offer. It's definitely something that, if I were looking at it, I would definitely at least get an idea of what, where I'm at. It will give them a level set. So I think
Yeah.
it's the firewall pen testing. I know from a past life that's that is definitely something that's really important.
Yeah, a full pen test, yeah, could be huge.
We
Go
had
ahead.
one question come in, and the question is, how would you prevent your employees from doing the email that was sent out asking for gift cards or transferring money?
Repeat that. How would we prevent that?
Right.
That's really got to be an education thing. Because even with the best of web, of spam filtering and everything, there's still a certain amount of risk that comes in. Thus, the reason why the cyber criminals are so effective is you have to let people go through some form of training to know to be able to spot a phishing attack and to kind of, I guess, understand the framework by which the bad actors are working. And that's done through education and your human being, your employee, and your endpoint, meaning your computer is your greatest risk as a business owner. What they're doing is they're wanting to gain access there, that persistent threat we spoke of. They're wanting to gain access, elevate their privileges, and then get to the crown jewels by accessing through the end user. Any comments on that, Charles? What do you think? Did I do
No,
okay?
I think that's important. You definitely want to have your team trained. There's a lot of tools out there that you could leverage, and they will basically do phishing simulations. So you could send them out tests that look just like an email that you'd get from Amazon or from UPS or the like. So you could kind of pick and choose. And what we found is you do those tests sporadically, and over time the results get better and better. So people start questioning it, and then they're not just randomly clicking on anything or sharing either their personal information or company information.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is we consider that probably the weakest link is the actual computer user or the employee most of the time.
Yep. True. Okay.
Last question. Do you need a backup internet option?
Again, if you're doing cloud services, like if you're running your business, off a cloud software as a service application, and if you're running, email, and you need to do that evaluation. If you're backing up to a cloud environment, you need to go through a little bit of work on that. Just some simple math. If you've got a large team of people, what you paying per hour on payroll? That's really easy. Every man knows, every business guy knows what his payroll is. Divide that by, a 2-week pay period and divide it by 80 hours and the number of employees. That's what just payroll's costing you. So I wouldn't say every business needs that, because some people, if you're working from a home office, you got 2 computers, you could hotspot your phone. But if you're going to be down for a period of time where you can't get backup, so I wouldn't. I would say that that's part of something that I would offer in this risk assessment, is to kind of help them look at that, disaster recovery, business continuity part of it, and say, yeah, you know what, man. And again, are you on fiber internet? Are you on, in our market, I'll say CenturyLink out loud and say how bad it is. I mean, if you're, depends on your carrier. So there's a lot of things that go into that, but that's part of that planning, that you don't want to be down. We had, after Sally, for instance, there was some people on MediaCom, and literally they were out for 2 months. And right down the road, or in that same market, AT&T was not affected. So it's probably a little bigger question, but definitely something to think about. Well, anything else? I guess if there's really no more questions, I've kept you over 4 minutes, and I apologize, but we will be sending out this recording. We have a lot of people that can't make it nowadays, and so they will be reviewing this. And again, if you have questions or comments, or if you'd like to do anything else, all you need to do is send that email to events@askbis.com. And I appreciate you guys taking the time with us today. I thank you, Charles, so much for your help.
Thank you.
my team for putting all this together to get folks on the call, and and we're here to help. If you need some help, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thanks. Have a good day.
All right, guys. Thank y'all.